being the possible first EV hatchback. Just so I don't get killed in the comments below. Not like we're gonna get slaughtered or anything like that. But hey,
Yeah,
but you know
yeah.
what? I guess this is a perfect segue into the next conversation, which I'm going to bring up fairly easily, which
Do it.
is if we are going to talk about new
Yeah.
EVs entering the marketplace, and most of them are going to have some sort of automation because you can get it on just about every road going vehicle at some level today. The NHTSA has
Mhm.
said basically that the days of free reign in the autonomous marketplace for autonomous driving cars are over. And what I mean by this is
Mhm.
there are more than 100 companies by this article in Car and Driver that are currently working on self driving or driving assist technology. However, none of them had to tell the feds up until now if there was an accident. And there's a caveat here, though. All right, I'm going to go through some of the things
Yep.
that I kind of picked up out of this article, and maybe some of you guys, if you got a chance to read it from the links below as well, because it does come out and it says that they're working on all sorts of new technologies, but for the last 3 years, most of these companies did not have to report anything because the previous administration did not want to interfere in what they called, I believe it was, growth in the industry, right? So
Stifling
that was
innovation,
it.
I
Yeah,
think. Yeah,
stifling
but yeah, it's
innovation,
just yeah,
right?
same.
But I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
go
yeah,
into a
yeah.
conversation here about oversight versus quote unquote oversight, which is basically where they went to here is how they're going to report this is they wanted to see if there was airbags or well, here's what's going to be reportable, right? Airbags deployed if there's a
Right.
death, if somebody goes to the hospital, if the vehicle needs to be towed, or if a pedestrian or bicyclist has been hit or actually impacted in some way, shape, or form. And they're talking about this for
Mhm.
the ADS systems or the automated driving
Mhm.
systems or the level two,
Yep.
which is the ADAS,
Yep.
which is engaged, right? That's level
Yep.
two, which means some of these things could be blind spot monitoring, some of they could be lane system, some would be adaptive
Yep.
cruise control,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And this
Yep.
impacts not only just Tesla's like autopilot, but also GM Super Cruise,
Yep.
right? Mm.
Cadillacs in there.
Yeah,
There's a lot of companies with level 2
lots and lots. Okay.
actually. So,
And now the
yeah.
other thing that here's what I'm going to talk about oversight versus oversight because basically they're saying that they're going to compile this information and when they do it they're going to basically after that look at what's necessary and then release it to the public. Okay?
Mhm.
And there's a number of quotes in here and one of the ones here is an order it reads in part given the rapid evolution of these technologies and testing of new technologies and the features on publicly accessible roads, it's critical for the NHTSA to exercise its robust oversight over potential safety defects in vehicles operating with ADS and level 2
Mhm.
ADAS. That's the
Mhm.
NHTSA. So now here's the difference. And now I'm going to kick off the conversation this way. There's been lots of cars out there that have autonomous mishaps over the last couple of years, and most of them have become very, very public. And they have
Mhm.
attracted the attention of the manufacturers. They've attracted the attention of the legal going bodies and so on and so forth. And I'm just wondering if that doesn't burn a company to be better prepared with their technology to move forward because one of the things that you had said before we came on was about liability. And I think that
Yes.
that's a huge place, and I think you got a couple of things to talk about liability there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So just as Mike and I were starting to look at these articles for tonight, and just kind of back and forth a little bit, I mentioned the thought that now whether this is true or not, it would seem that as Mike's mentioned, there are quite a number of vehicles now with level 2 capability. And if you're not sure what level 2 is, we're talking about the level of automation that a car can drive, and it goes
Hmm.
up to level 5, which would be completely autonomous. You get in the car and it takes you wherever, but currently is a lot of level 2 equipped cars. And again, one of the things would be, enhanced cruise control, something that has lane keeping assist, things like that. That if you're looking at newer cars, you've probably seen a lot of these things floating around. And one thing I was going to mention, Mike, actually, that I didn't notice before, we just talked about before the show, was that quote. I had to pull up the actual order,
Hmm.
but the quote kind of reads that if it's only level 2, then they want information. So when the technology is being tested for level 3 and above, are those not required?
I don't know.
And if that is the case, then they're really focusing on level 2, which has more widespread implementation. It's
Hmm.
actually more of those cars on the road, so they might be focusing more on those cars, that technology itself, And again, I'm just speculating here, but maybe not so much the cars in more development, level 3, level 4. We're not there yet, but you kind of get where I'm going
Yeah,
with
I
that.
do because let me.
But what you said too about liability, that was exactly what I was thinking was, and maybe you're going to say that, but maybe somebody who's more interested in claims, right?
You're going
Insurance,
somewhere. You're
and
going
whatnot.
somewhere.
Maybe people that are interested in insurance claims would be wanting to know that information uh, for possible adjustments of policies and things. So, and I'm just throwing it out there,
Oh, okay. Wait. So there's something else in the article,
I'm
though. Hold
seeing
on.
that.
There's something else in the article that I just want to touch on that. Well, before you go one step further, because you didn't say that before, so I want to say this really quick, right? They also highlighted
Yeah.
that companies will not be able to hide behind the claims of confidentiality, which is an important word to what you
Mm-hmm.
just said, and keeping this reporting any incidents. The NHTSA said it will recognize 3 categories of information that might be actually confidential, which version of the company's technology the vehicle is using, whether or not the vehicle was within operational design domain at the time of the incident, and some of the narrative the
Mm-hmm.
company is required to write down to explain what happened. So now you're setting up a whole different picture of liability, narrative, insurance, but there's one other thing, right? Let's just say the thing has to be towed or the category of what happens. So
Sure. Yeah.
does a car that autonomously beaches itself on, say, a curb that has to be towed, but nobody gets hurt, is that part of this incident? But now that the insurance company has to pay out on this, is that something they're going to want to know? So you opened up this can of worms, and I just want to know where you're headed.
And everything you just
Hmm.
said has to do with the almighty dollar
Okay,
sign,
sure,
right?
yeah.
And that's really where this is coming from, right? So exactly the thing you just said, if an automated car is doing lane keeping, and it kind of would drifts out of a lane and it hits a bush and it knocks the bumper off because
It's
you're going at
expensive
50 miles
bumper.
an hour, right? Nobody got hit, but there's been an incident, right? Something you've hit something. Then of course you want to, maybe you do, but file a claim, and the company's going to be like, well,
The company's gonna be like,
whatever reason, I mean, I guess where I'm
well,
going with that is
internet
it's the dollar
stutter.
sign,
Right.
right?
By the
So,
way, you cut out
um,
when you went well. When
and
you went well, you
another
cut
thing, I
out.
was I was just talking to somebody else.
So when you
Oh,
went
what's that?
well, you cut out, so you didn't get to finish the statement. So what was the second part of the statement? Well,
Oh, I think where I was going with that was just to say, well, are they gonna be less inclined to cover said incidents
ooh,
where there might be it may be some leeway where they can get out of paying you, is where I'm going with
gotcha.
that.
So if in other words, if
So
you decide
I
that you're
mean,
tired or maybe had one too many on the way home from the bar, and you decide to put this thing in full auto mode, and that's when it has an incident or an accident, you are already a liability that shouldn't
mhm,
have had that thing on the road in the first place. And that I completely understand.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, this is and funny enough, I was talking to somebody else about this kind of thing, this article actually earlier today, and we got in a little conversation about it, and it was exactly that. At some point where the level of automation
mm,
increases, this question of liabilities is only going to come up more because things are
okay.
going to happen. Whether the car is in level 5 and a bicycle comes out of an alleyway, and it's unavoidable and it hits the car,
I I would
somebody's still got to
I agree.
pay for something because even if it's level 5, totally approved by the DOT, whoever, who's driving. If you're sitting in the side seat, nobody's even in the front seat when level 5 hits. Who somebody's liable. So it's only going to be a question that persists with this
And
topic.
and
So
wait, and that you know what,
um
this is going to also persist if we get into automated air taxi industry. If the remote
yep,
operator
yep,
decides to
yep,
push this thing into a cloud and he shouldn't have, and it results in an incident
yep.
or an accident,
That's exactly what I was
well,
going
I
to
beat
say.
you to it.
Yep.
And
It's a great
yeah,
segue.
it
Yeah, there you
really is.
go. Yeah.
It's a really massive segue into the next topic that we're going to talk about as well, because there's something else there about pilot training.
Before we go, James
I
has a
know, I
comment.
saw that, and he said all the cars that I've driven with the lane keep assist, I hate it. Look, and you're not wrong, because they all have some level of intrusion where the wheel shakes a little bit just before you push that envelope of
Yes.
going over. But if you turn around, put the turn
Yep.
signal on, suddenly that goes away. But then you'll get the beeping.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them have the camera alert
Yep.
systems. I know your Tesla, it shows you a little
Hmm.
graphic of the car sitting there before you make that lane change. So
Yep.
they're all variables
Yep.
on the same scheme, but they're all giving you information at a different level. Now, I will say this: one of these will become quote unquote a standard, because if the NHTSA has their way, it sounds like to me also,
Mhm.
in order to play that liability protection game about what's allowable in your car as an assist, at some level they're probably going to have to standardize it so all cars can somewhat talk to each other and make it a simplified process for this, highway of the future. So
Yeah. Yep.
oversight versus
And just
oversight.
one last thing for me, and then I'll yeah, one last thing for me, and then I'll be done with it. I just want to pull out a
Hmm.
few more details at the very bottom. It just says that if the order says that companies will have a 1 day leeway from learning about this whatever incident is to file, and then 10
Oh
days for the
yeah, yeah,
rest
yeah,
of the
yeah.
details, whatever that might entail. But then it also says it must file a monthly report if that company has no accidents at all, and then likewise, this order is in effect for 3 years. So while we'll keep track of this for 3 years, or Mike and I will keep track of this, knowing it's only going to be going for another 3 years, we'll have to see obviously where the technology ends
Hmm.
up by then. Do they say, okay, level 2 is great, we're happy with that, boom, level 3 is now on our radar, or or does this evolve into something else? But also, if there's any pilots out there, you'll know some of these incident, then you have so many days to file. That looks
I
familiar.
mean,
So
yeah,
I
you
am
take
looking,
FAA, take
look,
NHTSA and replace it with
yes,
FAA, and it's very similar. Yeah,
yes, very very similar reporting scheme.
uncannily.
So we'll be interested to see what happens in 3 years,
Yeah.
basically.
So
Yeah.
James had one more comment in there. Not only with my sister's car, it changes the way that the steering feels. It's also true. I've been recently. I've been in the new Ford Explorer, the new
Yes.
Mazda CXE, CX-9, excuse me, and both of them had varying differences in the way that they felt. But they gave you different reports on when you went to escape that lane. So anyhow, hey folks, if you
Yep.
like what we have to say in this
Yep.
topic, by all means, like and subscribe, and we
Yep.
appreciate all the support. Thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. And additionally, hey, if you think we're on track for this one, or we're following the right path, let us know below. And if you think we're completely off the path, let us know. But there's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of money made in the companies of the future that are going to be developing part of these technologies, the sensors, the drive motors, everything else that you don't really think about on a daily basis. But there's going to be a lot of component players out there that are out to make a quick buck. So let's see how that transforms the entire industry over the time that we're working with it. So hey, cool. All right. So
Mhm.
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the CAE one, because this kind
What's
of gets into that same conversation a little bit, and then we'll close it out with
Yep.
Tesla. How's that for you?
That sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it does kind of fit better with what we just talked about. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
didn't even think about it until, and like, actually when we got in there, I was like, oh, that's eerily familiar, because training's going to be important.